The story begins with the protagonist waking up in a large, unfamiliar apartment, feeling discomfort in his head and sensing noise around him. He notices many unfamiliar people nearby and becomes confused about the situation. After observing his surroundings, he realizes the place is not his own and considers whether he has been kidnapped or is dreaming. A sudden pain strikes his head, interrupting his thoughts. As he tries to recall what happened the previous night, he remembers receiving a letter. The scene then shifts to his previous residence, which is shown to be messy, with scattered cans, tissues, clothes, and shoes. The protagonist is identified as Xiao Lin, a recent graduate who has not yet found stable employment and is earning money by playing games. He spent his time at his computer, where he is skilled and recognized for his gameplay. After finishing a session, he rests on his bed while browsing the internet and eating snacks. While lying there, he recalls his father's harsh criticism, which led him to move out and live independently to prove his worth. Shortly after moving, he receives a late-night delivery. At the door is a suspicious man holding an envelope addressed to him. Upon opening the envelope, a dark energy emerges and surrounds him. At the same time, information appears in his vision stating that he has been accepted as a probationary freshman at Dawn Academy, followed by an automatic identity verification and forced teleportation. The energy pulls him into a portal. Returning to the present, Xiao Lin reflects on this event and concludes that the letter is responsible for bringing him to this unfamiliar place. While he is still processing the situation, a man in a military uniform with a large sword approaches him and notes that he has finally awakened, commenting on how long he had been unconscious. The surrounding people begin reacting, questioning their situation and expressing confusion and fear. The man responds by drawing his sword, which emits visible energy and demonstrates its power by damaging part of the structure nearby. This display causes everyone present to become silent and fearful. He then orders everyone to stop speaking and expresses frustration about the behavior of new arrivals. He proceeds to explain that they are in Dawn Academy, specifically in a first-year class, and introduces himself as Qin Chuan, their advisor. He informs them that they have been selected to undergo training to improve their abilities and eventually gain access to another world. The group reacts differently, with some doubting the explanation, others feeling uneasy, and some remaining attentive. Qin Chuan continues by stating that within this place, they can obtain power, wealth, authority, and even immortality. This statement causes visible shock among the group. He then instructs everyone to collect identification and follow him to begin a potential evaluation. Xiao Lin observes the large number of people present and realizes that the situation is far beyond a normal incident. Questioning whether he is still on Earth, he follows along with the others as they form a line for evaluation. At the evaluation area, individuals step forward one by one onto an altar that measures their attributes. Qin Chuan monitors the results on a display and comments on each outcome. Some results are considered low, while others are seen as acceptable, and reactions vary among the participants depending on their scores. The process continues steadily as more individuals are evaluated. Eventually, Xiao Lin steps onto the altar for his own evaluation. As time passes without immediate results, he begins to feel uncertain while waiting for the process to complete. Document Xiao Lin notices that his evaluation is taking much longer than everyone else's, far exceeding the usual few seconds. While he is still waiting, Advisor Qin observes him with interest. Eventually, the evaluation completes, and Xiao Lin feels relieved. However, before he can leave, Qin stops him to check his results. Qin initially assumes that the long evaluation time might indicate exceptional potential, but upon reviewing the data, he finds that Xiao Lin's attributes are extremely low. His total attribute value is far below the others. This result surprises Qin, and he reacts with clear disappointment, stating that he has never seen such low initial stats. He openly criticizes Xiao Lin, labeling him as the weakest among all the students. Xiao Lin feels discouraged and continues walking away, internally reacting to the criticism. Qin continues speaking in a sarcastic manner, expressing that his earlier expectation was misplaced. Hearing this, Xiao Lin pauses and recalls how he has been called worthless throughout his life. This memory reinforces his frustration, as he realizes that even in this new environment, he is still judged the same way. Qin further remarks that with such low attributes, participating in the upcoming test would be dangerous and not worthwhile. Before he can finish, Xiao Lin takes the identification card himself, showing that he refuses to accept this judgment. He decides that he will attempt the test regardless of his stats. Qin acknowledges his determination, but responds with skepticism, stating that reality will prove the outcome. At this point, another student asks Qin about what he meant by gifted individuals. Qin explains that such individuals are naturally advantaged and are more likely to succeed in the new world. He contrasts them with the rest of the group, emphasizing that survival depends on passing the upcoming test. This explanation increases the tension among the students. A female student named Gu Xiaoya then asks about the cost of obtaining power and wealth in the academy. Qin checks her information and notes that she has the highest initial attributes among the group, though she lacks special talents. He answers her question by explaining that the academy operates using a system of credits and exchange points, which function as currency for obtaining resources. Qin then instructs everyone on how to view their personal status by activating it mentally. Xiao Lin follows this instruction, and a system panel appears displaying his personal information, including attributes, ratings, and lifespan. The panel also includes a warning stating that each death will reduce his remaining lifespan, and once it reaches 0, he will permanently die. This information shocks Xiao Lin, and similar reactions spread among the others as they realize the implications of the system. Many begin to panic upon seeing their limited lifespan and the consequences of death. Amid this confusion, Xiao Lin received a unique notification indicating an abnormal fluctuation in the activation of a hidden talent. He is surprised, especially given his low attributes, and notices that no one else seems aware of this event. Additional system messages appear, stating that the talent has no existing record in the database and providing details about its effects. The talent significantly enhances his learning ability and includes a temporary copying function that allows him to replicate certain abilities under specific conditions. It also states that the user has the right to name the talent due to its uniqueness. After considering its functions, Xiao Lin assigns it a name. The system then evaluates the talent and determines it to be of extremely high rank. Realizing that even Qin was unable to detect this during the earlier evaluation, Xiao Lin understands that this hidden ability may become a crucial advantage for him moving forward. A student wearing a hoodie becomes visibly anxious after reading the lifespan information and questions Qin about how it works. He points out that his remaining lifespan is already low and worries that losing 10 years upon death would immediately reduce it to 0. He suspects that this might be an error in the system. Qin reacts with irritation and responds firmly. He confirms that the student's understanding is correct, explaining that if someone with insufficient remaining lifespan dies even once, their lifespan will be completely depleted, resulting in immediate death. He then shifts his tone and clarifies that this situation should not be seen as a disadvantage. Qin explains that, unlike the outside world where lost lifespan cannot be recovered, the Academy treats lifespan as a resource. It can be gained, spent, and exchanged through completing tasks, earning points, and improving one's strength. He emphasizes that this system provides opportunities rather than limitations. The student remains overwhelmed, while Qin continues explaining that the Academy offers a structured path for individuals to change their circumstances. He describes the benefits available within the Academy, including access to power, knowledge, wealth, and even extended lifespan. He makes it clear that with sufficient credits and exchange points, it is theoretically possible to reach extremely high levels of achievement, including immortality. His explanation is direct and structured so that everyone can understand the system clearly. Another student, a composed girl with long hair and glasses, asks whether these rules apply only within the Academy or beyond it. Qin answers her politely, explaining that once someone becomes a student of the Academy, these rules apply universally as long as they remain on Earth. After addressing the questions, Qin ends the discussion and initiates the entrance test. He instructs everyone to remain where they are. A system announcement begins a countdown for teleportation. As the countdown reaches 0, a purple light envelopes everyone, and they are transported away. After the students are gone, Qin expresses dissatisfaction with the current group, noting the lack of outstanding individuals and considering the impact this may have on his evaluation. Shortly after, another instructor approaches him and mentions that his own class has recruited highly capable students with strong initial attributes. Qin responds by stating that his class also has a student with relatively high attribute values. The other instructor argues that raw attributes are less important than talent and refers to past claims of exceptionally high-ranking talents. Qin dismisses these claims, explaining that such records do not exist in the official database, and that even top-tier talents are extremely rare. Meanwhile, the students are transported into a forest area inside a goblin nest. The environment is enclosed by large tree roots and has a strong, unpleasant odor, causing immediate discomfort among the group. A system panel appears again, announcing the start of the entrance test. The mandatory objective requires them to escape the forest and reach a safe zone within a limited time. Additional optional objectives are provided, including defeating goblins and eliminating a stronger target. Rewards in the form of credits and exchange points are listed for completing these tasks. The system also distributes a starter pack to each participant, which includes a random weapon. Shortly after, another notification appears clarifying that during this test, there is no penalty for death, meaning their lifespan will not be reduced regardless of what happens. After receiving the system message that there would be no death penalty during the test, the atmosphere among the group eases, and many begin to feel relieved. Some openly express their excitement at this information. Xiao Lin proceeds to open the starter pack provided by the system. He receives a beginner-level staff with a magic attack rating, along with an attached skill. The weapon appears in his hand, featuring a visible gem at its tip. Immediately after, another system notification appears, informing him that he has unlocked a basic mastery skill related to the staff. He examines the weapon and recognizes similarities between this system and the games he is familiar with. Acting on this understanding, he takes a stance and channels his energy through the staff, releasing a basic attack toward a nearby object. The attack produces visible impact, but shortly after, the system notifies him that his available energy is insufficient to continue using the skill. At the same time, he notices that using the weapon increases his skill experience. From this, Xiao Lin realizes that his talent enhances his learning speed, allowing him to improve faster than others. However, he also becomes aware of his limitations, as his low attributes restrict how often he can use such abilities. Looking around, he observes that others are also testing their weapons and gaining experience. Some are using swords, while others are trying different weapon types. He analyzes the situation and concludes that while gaining experience through repeated use is possible, there are limitations due to resource consumption and time constraints imposed by the test. While he is thinking through his strategy, Gu Xiaoya approaches him and proposes a weapon exchange. She explains her reasoning, noting that magic-based weapons likely depend on mental or intelligence-related attributes, making the staff more suitable for her. She also points out that Xiao Lin may not be well suited for it. Xiao Lin accepts the proposal, and they exchange weapons. He receives a dagger, which immediately unlocks a corresponding mastery skill. After handling it, he finds it more comfortable and better suited to his current condition. Considering the situation, Xiao Lin begins thinking about forming a team to improve his chances of passing the test. Before he can complete his thought, another student, Wang Dalin, approaches Gu Xiaoya and proposes teaming up. He presents himself confidently, highlighting his high attributes and positioning himself as a more reliable partner. Gu Xiaoya does not respond to him, which draws attention from others nearby. Some react with amusement at the situation. Wang Dalin, noticing the reactions around him, becomes irritated and shifts his attention toward Xiao Lin. He confronts Xiao Lin directly, expressing disdain for his low attributes and questioning his presence. Xiao Lin responds calmly, stating that success in the test depends on individual capability rather than confrontation. This response further provokes Wang Dalin, who becomes more aggressive and physically confronts Xiao Lin. However, at that moment, Xiao Lin notices a goblin approaching from behind Wang Dalin. Recognizing the immediate danger, he realizes that the situation is about to escalate beyond their argument. A goblin suddenly jumps toward Wang Dalin and attacks him, leaving visible claw marks on his face. He reacts in pain, but quickly regains control. When the goblin attacks again, he counters and kills it with his weapon. Although he manages to defeat it, he is visibly shaken by how close the encounter was. After recovering, he directs his frustration toward Xiao Lin, assuming that he had been watching the situation without warning him. However, before the situation can escalate further, movement in the surrounding bushes draws attention. Multiple pairs of glowing eyes appear, and soon a large group of goblins emerges. The goblins begin attacking the students in large numbers. The group quickly loses formation as individuals try to defend themselves. Despite having weapons, most of them lack experience, making it difficult to respond effectively. Several students are injured or overwhelmed during the initial assault. Xiao Lin engages in combat and immediately realizes that the experience is far different from a game. The physical sensations, including pain and impact, feel completely real. While defending himself, he observes the chaos around him and understands that inexperienced individuals are at a severe disadvantage in this environment. During the fight, a student is caught by a goblin, but Gu Xiaoya intervenes and eliminates the threat using a precise attack. Xiao Lin continues fighting nearby, gradually adapting to the situation while managing his limited strength. Amid the chaos, a student notices that the goblins are not entering a nearby cave and calls others to retreat there. The group quickly gathers inside, using it as a temporary safe zone. Xiao Lin observes the system panel and notices that the cave's protection is limited by time. Inside the cave, the students begin to recover slightly, but tension remains high as the protection countdown continues. Xiao Lin realizes that staying inside indefinitely is not an option. He decides to remain focused and prepares himself for further combat rather than waiting passively. He begins practicing with his dagger, attacking nearby goblins to improve his skill. Through repeated actions, he confirms that proper technique and sufficient force are required to gain experience. Given his low attributes, he understands that each action must be deliberate and efficient. As the remaining protection time decreases, anxiety spreads among the students. Some begin to express concern about the difficulty of the task, especially due to the speed and aggression of the goblins. Gu Xiaoya approaches Xiao Lin and points out that simply trying to increase skill levels through repetition is not an effective strategy within the time limit. Xiao Lin acknowledges her reasoning but continues his actions, as his own calculations suggest that he is close to reaching the next level due to his enhanced learning ability. He then shifts the discussion toward analyzing the goblins. Gu Xiaoya confirms that she has been observing them, and Xiao Lin shares his assessment. He concludes that the goblins have relatively low offensive and defensive capabilities, and their weaknesses lie in vital areas such as the head and heart. He explains that the main obstacle for most students is not the strength of the enemies, but their own fear. As the protection time nears its end, Gu Xiaoya decides to leave the cave to continue toward the objective. Xiao Lin follows, agreeing that avoiding confrontation entirely is not a viable strategy. At that moment, Wang Dalin appears and attempts once again to recruit Gu Xiaoya, proposing that their combined strength would allow them to complete the objective more effectively. Wang Dalin dismisses Xiao Lin and argues that bringing him along would only increase the risk. In response, Gu Xiaoya shifts the focus to the objective, explaining that reaching the safe zone is manageable, but the true challenge and greater reward lie in defeating the Goblin King. Wang Dalin disagrees, pointing out that the Goblin King is part of an optional objective and questioning the practicality of pursuing it when survival itself is uncertain. Xiao Lin intervenes and explains that the existence of the objective implies that it is achievable. He reasons that the boss has not appeared yet because certain conditions must be met, such as time, remaining participants, or the number of enemies defeated. Gu Xiaoya considers his reasoning and eliminates less likely possibilities, concluding that the most probable trigger is the number of goblins eliminated. Xiao Lin agrees with this conclusion, suggesting that once a certain threshold is reached, the boss will appear. Some students hesitate, questioning why they should take the risk of confronting a stronger enemy when completing the main objective is sufficient. Xiao Lin explains that the current test has no penalty for failure, meaning that any additional rewards gained come without risk. He emphasizes that this is a rare opportunity to gain extra benefits without long-term consequences. His reasoning convinces several students, who begin to accept the idea. Others acknowledge that remaining inside the cave is no longer a viable option due to the expiring protection. Meanwhile, Wang Dalin attempts to assert his authority by highlighting his higher attributes and questioning Xiao Lin's credibility. Gu Xiaoya responds by revealing her own attribute total, which is significantly higher. This immediately shifts the group's perception, and she takes the lead in organizing the team. She assigns roles based on individual strengths, directing stronger individuals to engage enemies directly, while ranged fighters provide support from a distance. Xiao Lin is assigned a role that involves mobility and targeting weakened enemies. With a coordinated plan, the group exits the cave and confronts the goblins. Wang Dalin leads the front line, engaging multiple enemies, while others provide support from behind. Despite their efforts, the goblins prove agile, closing distances quickly and threatening those at range. During the battle, one of the ranged fighters is nearly overwhelmed, but Xiao Lin intervenes and eliminates the attacking goblin at the last. After one of the goblins is eliminated, a system notification confirms the kill. The nearby student who was just saved regains composure and shows gratitude toward Xiao Lin. Meanwhile, Xiao Lin, already exhausted, refines his approach. Instead of engaging enemies directly, he focuses on conserving stamina and only stepping in at the right moment to deliver decisive strikes. Following this method, he continues eliminating goblins one by one. System notifications track each successful kill as his count steadily increases. His movements become consistent and efficient, always targeting enemies at their most vulnerable point rather than engaging in prolonged combat. Other students begin to notice this pattern. Some interpret his timing as coincidence, while others observe more carefully and realize that his actions are deliberate. Gu Xiaoye, in particular, recognizes that Xiao Lin is not relying on chance, but is actively predicting enemy behavior and positioning himself in advance. As he continues, his dagger skill gains experience rapidly. Repeated successful actions lead to a skill level increase, confirmed by system notifications. This progression reflects both his efficiency and the effect of his enhanced learning ability. Xiao Lin briefly reflects on his past experience with immersive games, realizing that it has contributed to his ability to execute precise timing under pressure. This prior experience allows him to adapt more quickly than others in the same situation. Shortly after reaching a new skill level, another system message appears, indicating that he is the first among the current group to achieve this milestone. As a result, he is granted an additional skill suited to his capabilities. The system provides details about this new ability, including its requirements and usage conditions. With this progress, Xiao Lin realizes he is close to completing one of the optional objectives. He continues applying the same strategy until he eliminates another goblin, fulfilling the requirement. The system confirms completion of the objective and records the achievement. Immediately after, the remaining goblins begin to disappear, dissolving into particles. This sudden change confuses the students, as the battlefield clears unexpectedly. A system broadcast follows, explaining that a certain condition has been met. This triggers the next phase of the test. The ground begins to shake, signaling the arrival of a new entity. From the forest, a massive figure emerges, significantly larger and more imposing than the previous enemies. Its appearance and scale clearly distinguish it from the goblins encountered earlier. The students recognize that this is the boss entity associated with the hidden objective, the Goblin King. Timed. As they look up, they clearly identify the creature as the boss of the area. Xiao Lin observes the situation and recalls that all the smaller goblins have disappeared, confirming that the boss has replaced them. The sudden shift causes fear to spread among the group. One of the students, overwhelmed by the size and presence of the Goblin King, loses composure and decides to flee, ignoring the danger of acting recklessly. Xiao Lin immediately recognizes the risk in that action. From his earlier observations, he understands that these creatures rely heavily on their senses, particularly hearing and smell. The fleeing student unintentionally draws the Goblin King's attention, making himself the primary target. At the same time, Wang Dalin attempts to take control of the situation by encouraging others to attack together. He charges forward and strikes at the Goblin King. However, the attack proves ineffective. The Goblin King responds with a single counterattack that sends Wang Dalin flying backward with significant force, leaving him severely injured. This outcome causes the group to lose what little composure they had. Seeing a strong individual defeated instantly, many students panic, abandon their weapons, and begin running in different directions. The situation quickly collapses into disorder. The Goblin King takes advantage of this panic and begins attacking the fleeing students. Several are unable to escape and are eliminated during the chaos. The difference in strength between the boss and the students becomes evident as it continues its assault without resistance. During this, one student falls directly in the Goblin King's path and is unable to escape. As the creature prepares to strike, Gu Xiaoye intervenes and launches an attack to interrupt it. The impact allows the student to escape, although the strike itself is not fully effective. After observing the result, Gu Xiaoye analyzes the situation and concludes that attacks on non-critical areas result in reduced effectiveness. She understands that targeting specific weak points will be necessary to to deal meaningful damage to the Goblin King. Gu Xiaoye quickly reassesses the situation after the formation collapses. Her original plan relied on coordinated teamwork, where others would hold the Goblin King's attention while ranged attackers steadily dealt damage. However, with the group scattered and panicked, that structure is no longer possible. As the Goblin King advances, she realizes that her initial strategy depended too heavily on ideal conditions that no longer exist. At that moment, Xiao Lin intervenes, drawing the Goblin King's attention by attacking from behind. The creature immediately retaliates, but Xiao Lin avoids the strike and repositions himself. He uses this moment to communicate what he has observed, explaining that the Goblin King prioritizes the nearest target when attacking. Recognizing that all lesser enemies are gone, Xiao Lin simplifies the situation. They now only need to focus on a single opponent. He instructs the remaining students to stay calm, maintain distance, and alternate attacks to create openings. The Bao user and Gu Xiaoye follow this approach, launching coordinated ranged attacks that successfully land on the Goblin King and briefly disrupt its movements. This brief success shows that the strategy is viable, but the Goblin King quickly adapts. It retaliates with a powerful area attack, striking the ground and causing widespread destruction. Debris is thrown outward, and one of the students is struck and incapacitated, reducing their numbers further. With the situation worsening, only Xiao Lin and Gu Xiaoye remain actively engaged. Gu Xiaoye questions whether they still have a chance. Xiao Lin immediately evaluates their remaining resources and asks about her ability to continue attacking. She confirms that she can only perform a limited number of attacks. Xiao Lin formulates a direct approach, identifying the head as a critical target and suggesting that a precise strike could deal significant damage. However, Gu Xiaoye expresses concern about the difficulty of landing such an attack due to the Goblin King's speed. In response, Xiao Lin decides to compensate for this limitation himself. He activates his hidden talent, triggering a system response that allows him to replicate an ability. Through this, he gains access to a skill capable of affecting the Goblin King's movement. As the ability activates, his perception sharpens, allowing him to better understand the target and its vulnerabilities. With this advantage, he moves toward the Goblin King, preparing to create an opening that Gu Xiaoye can use to deliver a decisive attack. Xiao Lin moves toward the Goblin King while observing its behavior closely. He anticipates its next action, recognizing that the creature is about to use the same shockwave ability he previously copied. From his earlier observation, he understands that the Goblin King activates the skill by striking the ground with both hands, while his own version is triggered through his weapon. He concludes that his activation must be faster to interrupt the attack. As the Goblin King attacks, Xiao Lin activates the copied skill and meets the strike directly. The collision releases a shockwave that disrupts the enemy's action. From this exchange, he confirms that skills can be interrupted under the right conditions. However, he also realizes that his copied ability has a cooldown, preventing continuous use. The Goblin King quickly follows with another attack. Xiao Lin times his response carefully, using the copied skill again to counter and inflict damage. Despite this, the creature continues its assault, forcing Xiao Lin to maintain precise timing while managing the cooldown limitation. Gu Xiaoye, already exhausted, informs him that she only has enough energy left for one final attack. At the same time, she observes Xiao Lin's actions and realizes that he is successfully interrupting the Goblin King's abilities despite his low attributes. The Goblin King escalates its attack by lifting a large boulder and striking downward. Xiao Lin determines that he cannot fully avoid the attack in time. Instead of retreating, he chooses to endure the impact while continuing his plan. The collision generates a large shockwave, and although he survives, he sustains severe damage. Despite his injuries, Xiao Lin continues to act. As the Goblin King presses forward, he maneuvers beneath its body, positioning himself at a point where his skill will be most effective. He waits for the cooldown to finish while maintaining his position under extreme pressure. The moment the cooldown ends, he activates the copied skill again. This final shockwave destabilizes the Goblin King, forcing it off balance and creating a critical opening. Xiao Lin immediately calls out to Gu Xiaoye. Using the opportunity, Gu Xiaoye delivers her final attack, targeting the Goblin King's head. The strike is effective, and the creature's health is depleted. The Goblin King disappears, confirming its defeat. System notifications follow, confirming the completion of the objective. Xiao Lin, having pushed himself beyond his limits, can barely remain standing. After confirming the result, he finally releases his weapon and collapses from exhaustion. Gu Xiaoye immediately moves toward him, but Xiao Lin, in his weakened state, reflects briefly on the remaining objective. He realizes that although they have defeated the boss, reaching the safe zone within the time limit may no longer be possible. As his awareness fades, his vision closes while she approaches. The scene then transitions to a different location within the academy, where several advisors are gathered in a high-tech room. They are seated around a table, reviewing the results of the freshman entrance test as part of their evaluation process. The head of the admissions department begins summarizing the outcomes. He explains that a total of 1,360 students were admitted across multiple classes and presents the distribution of evaluation ranks, ranging from lower tiers up to the highest category. He highlights that a small number of students achieve the top rating, which immediately draws attention from the others. This information prompts discussion among the advisors. Some express surprise at the number of high-performing students, questioning whether this batch includes an unusually large number of talented individuals. Others compare results between classes, noting how many strong students each group has recruited. The head of admissions continues by confirming the number of gifted students identified in this intake and remarks that the overall quality of this group is the highest seen in many years. While most advisors react positively, Qin Chuan expresses dissatisfaction, noting that his class appears to lack any gifted individuals. In response, the head of admissions clarifies that Qin's class has still achieved notable results. He explains that the class has set 2 records. It is the first instance where 2 non-gifted students both achieve the highest evaluation rank, and it also includes a student with the highest intelligence attribute recorded among freshmen. This information surprises the advisors. He further reveals that these achievements are paired with another unusual statistic, as the same 2 individuals also hold the record for the lowest combined attributes. The contrast between these records makes the case particularly noteworthy, drawing attention even from higher authorities within the academy. The scene then transitions back to the apartment-like location where the students are returned after the test. A system announcement confirms the completion of the entrance test and initiates teleportation back to the starting area. The students reappear and begin reacting with relief and excitement after surviving the trial. Many notice that their injuries have been completely healed. Xiao Lin checks his system panel and reviews his results, which show that he has completed all objectives and received the highest overall rating along with corresponding rewards. He reflects on the completion of the safe zone objective, realizing that he had lost consciousness earlier and concluding that someone must have assisted him afterward. He looks toward Gu Xiaoye and infers that she was responsible for ensuring his survival. Shortly after, another student approaches him and expresses gratitude, acknowledging that without his and Gu Xiaoye's actions, she would not have achieved a high evaluation. Xiao Lin confirms that they successfully defeated the Goblin King, which excites the student further. However, not everyone shares the same view. One observer dismisses Xiao Lin's contribution, attributing his success to relying on Gu Xiaoye rather than his own ability. Amid this, Gu Xiaoye approaches Xiao Lin and requests to speak with him privately about what occurred during the battle, indicating that she has taken particular interest in his actions and abilities. The scene shifts to a quiet corner within the same white building, where Xiao Lin and Gu Xiaoye stand facing each other. Xiao Lin begins by expressing gratitude for what happened during the safe zone phase. Gu Xiaoye responds in a composed manner, stating that her actions were based on efficiency and maximizing results rather than personal intent. She acknowledges that without Xiao Lin creating the opening during the battle, she would not have been able to deliver the decisive attack. Xiao Lin reflects on her analytical mindset, noting how precisely she evaluates situations. Gu Xiaoye then raises a point of curiosity, observing that his performance does not align with his recorded attributes. She states that, in theory, his actions should not have been possible. However, she makes it clear that she has no intention of investigating further and assures him that she will keep any such observations private if questioned. Xiao Lin accepts this with a brief acknowledgement. Gu Xiaoye then introduces a practical matter, explaining that the identification system they carry includes a built-in interface with communication functions. She suggests adding each other as contacts to maintain communication. Xiao Lin agrees, and upon activating the interface, his basic information appears, displaying his current attributes and resources. After exchanging identification details, the system confirms that they have successfully added each other as contacts. Their conversation is interrupted when Qin Xuan calls out instructions to the students. Those who received lower evaluations are ordered to assemble separately, while the rest are directed to move toward a central location using the system's navigation feature. Qin specifically calls Gu Xiaoya aside briefly. She responds and prepares to follow the instruction, while Xiao Lin activates the navigation system to locate the destination. As Xiao Lin moves toward the designated area, he considers why Qin singled out Gu Xiaoya, wondering whether it is due to her performance or something more. The scene transitions to a large stadium where students from different groups are gathering in increasing numbers. Observing the crowd, Xiao Lin reflects on the scale of the situation and considers the implications of so many individuals being removed from their original environment simultaneously. Shortly after, Gu Xiaoye rejoins him, confirming that she did not disclose anything unnecessary during her brief interaction. Attention then shifts as a group approaches the gathering. A young individual with a composed presence moves toward the central platform, accompanied by others who begin organizing the students into formation. Once the group is arranged, the individual introduces himself as the president of the Academy's student council. He informs the students that the principal will arrive later due to other matters and states that he will temporarily represent the Academy in welcoming the new students. All attention focuses on him as he begins addressing the group. A sudden roar interrupts the gathering, drawing everyone's attention upward. The students look toward the sky and see a massive dragon descending. Its body is covered in dark scales, with energy radiating from it, and its presence alone causes intense fear among those below. Xiao Lin observes the creature and immediately recognizes it as a real dragon. The overwhelming pressure from its presence causes his body to freeze, preventing him from moving. Around him, other students experience the same reaction, including Gu Xiaoye, who realizes that the fear is not just psychological, but a direct physical response. The dragon lands near the assembly area. Standing on its back is an elderly man with a composed demeanor, holding a staff. He dismounts and addresses the students, explaining that he arrived in a hurry. His behavior toward the dragon is casual, treating it as a means of transportation rather than something extraordinary. This individual is introduced as the principal of the academy. The student council president comments on the dramatic nature of his arrival, but the principal dismisses the idea, explaining that he used the dragon out of necessity due to time constraints. He also expresses irritation at the dragon's behavior upon entering this world. Xiao Lin observes him carefully and realizes that this person holds authority beyond others in the academy. He notes that the principal may have the ability to perceive things that others cannot. The principal then shifts focus to the students and begins addressing them directly. He activates a spell to amplify his voice and acknowledges that many of them were brought here under unusual circumstances, which may have caused dissatisfaction. He humorously shifts the blame for their abrupt recruitment onto the admissions department, which lightens the mood among the students. After briefly easing the tension, he becomes more serious and states that he will answer the fundamental questions the students have. He explains the identity and purpose of the academy and its students. He describes their role as participants in a larger mission, introducing the concept of another world. He identifies this world as Norma and explains that it is the target of their future efforts. The academy's role is defined as training individuals to operate in that world and prepare them for its challenges. As he continues, he makes it clear that the students are being trained for a purpose tied to expansion and conflict in that new world. The statement establishes the broader objective of the academy and the path that lies ahead for all of them. The principal continues addressing the students, stating that their ordinary lives ended the moment they accepted the invitation to the academy. He explains that from this point onward, their paths will diverge into roles of influence and power, such as leading armies, mastering advanced knowledge, or shaping authority in a new world. He emphasizes that opportunities such as power, knowledge, authority, and even extended lifespan are all attainable through their efforts. His words generate a strong reaction among the students, who respond with excitement. The principal reinforces this vision by describing the new world as a place filled with opportunities waiting to be claimed. After allowing the atmosphere to settle, he introduces a new regulation. Traditionally, freshmen are not allowed to enter the new world, but he announces a change. The top 3 students in the first-year comprehensive evaluation will be granted early access. This decision surprises those present, particularly the student council president, who raises concerns about safety. However, the principal dismisses the concern with a brief response, and the matter is closed without further discussion. With the announcement complete, the principal ends the gathering and dismisses the students. As they begin to disperse, Xiao Lin reflects on the unusual reaction from the student council president, sensing that there may be more significance to the new rule than was explained. At the same time, he recognizes that his immediate priority is to improve his abilities using the academy's resources. As he prepares to leave, Qin Chuan calls him aside. Qin explains that the position of class president is normally assigned to the top performer of the entrance test, but since Gu Xiaoye declined the role, it has been passed on to Xiao Lin. Qin outlines the importance of the position, noting that it comes with additional resources, privileges, and benefits that can significantly aid development. He emphasizes that for someone with Xiao Lin's low starting attributes, these advantages are particularly valuable. He also explains that the position will be reassessed after the upcoming comprehensive evaluation, meaning Xiao Lin must make use of it while he can. A system notification then confirms Xiao Lin's appointment as the acting class president. Qin concludes the interaction by informing him that further details will be provided through the system and leaves him to review them independently. The scene then shifts to the student dormitory, where Xiao Lin arrives to receive accommodation instructions. A senior student explains the basic rules, including curfew and penalties for violations. After confirming his understanding, Xiao Lin is informed of his assigned status as class president, which changes the tone of the interaction. The senior student becomes more accommodating and guides him through the process of receiving supplies and selecting a room. She explains the uniform system, where colors indicate academic year, and provides him with the appropriate attire. Finally, she shows him to his assigned room, noting that as an acting class president, he is given a private room, whereas regular freshmen are assigned shared accommodations. Xiao Lin observes this difference, recognizing the immediate benefits that come with his new position. After arriving at his room, Xiao Lin is given his identification plate and informed of its importance. It is required for multiple functions such as curfew tracking, purchases, and attendance. The senior student introduces herself as Zhang Tingting and offers assistance for academic or campus-related matters. Xiao Lin accepts and acknowledges her help. Before leaving, she reminds him to carefully choose his courses. Once alone, Xiao Lin reflects on her change in attitude after learning about his position as class president. He connects this to the privileges associated with the role and begins to understand that the academy operates on a clear hierarchy based on strength and status. He shifts his focus to course selection and opens the system interface. A wide range of options appears, including combat-related courses, secondary attribute training, and mandatory academic subjects related to the New World. The large number of choices initially overwhelms him, but he regains focus by considering his current situation. Recognizing his low attributes as a major weakness, he decides to prioritize balanced improvement. He factors in the advantage provided by his talent, which enhances learning efficiency, and determines that he must use this to accelerate his overall growth. He selects a set of courses that support this goal. For combat, he chooses basic swordsmanship due to its versatility. He also selects physical training, movement, and meditation to improve survivability, control, and mental capacity. Alongside these, he includes the mandatory subjects related to the world they will eventually enter. After finalizing his choices, he confirms the selection. The next day, training begins in a large arena designed for practice. Students assigned to swordsmanship are gathered and begin repetitive training exercises using wooden targets. Xiao Lin participates actively, focusing on proper technique rather than random swings. As he trains, system notifications track his progress. His understanding of technique improves quickly, and his talent further accelerates his learning speed. Within a short period, his skill level increases, and his attributes begin to improve as a result. While other students struggle with exhaustion and slow progress, Xiao Lin continues advancing at a noticeably faster pace. Many find the training demanding, expressing frustration at the required effort. The instructor, a senior student named Cheng Na, enforces strict standards and requires everyone to reach a minimum skill level before leaving. Her approach leaves little room for rest, adding pressure to the class. After continuing his training, Xiao Lin reaches the required skill level within a short time. He approaches the instructor and requests permission to leave early in order to attend his next scheduled class. Na reacts with skepticism, questioning how he could achieve such progress so quickly at the very start of training. Instructor Na questions Xiao Lin directly, referring to his background and expressing doubt about his ability. She assumes that his results are not reliable and considers his claim of reaching the required level in such a short time to be unrealistic. Xiao Lin responds calmly, stating that his data can verify his progress. Instead of accepting this, Na activates her authority as an instructor. A system warning appears, and the environment begins to change. The training ground transforms into a different setting, filled with skeletal remains, as both of them are transported into a combat simulation field. The system announces the activation of a full discipline combat simulation. Na explains that this space is constructed using elements derived from the laws of the New World and requires significant resources to operate. She makes it clear that while death is not permanent within this environment, all physical sensations are fully real. She then initiates the test by summoning skeletal soldiers and instructs Xiao Lin to prove his ability through actual combat rather than relying on data. The system provides clear objectives for the challenge, including surviving for a set duration or defeating a specified number of enemies. Xiao Lin quickly realizes the scale of what has been initiated. Despite being intended as a verification of his skill level, the situation has escalated into a full combat scenario. He also understands that the enemies he faces are comparable in strength to those from the entrance test. As the skeletal soldiers begin attacking, Xiao Lin reacts by evading the initial strikes and assessing the situation. He identifies two possible approaches: enduring the duration of the challenge or actively eliminating the enemies. Choosing to engage, he adopts a direct combat strategy. By targeting weak points, he determines that each enemy can be defeated efficiently with precise strikes. As he continues fighting, system notifications confirm each successful elimination and provide minor rewards. While surrounded, Xiao Lin calculates the effort required to complete the objective, estimating the number of actions needed to defeat all opponents. With this understanding, he prepares to continue the fight, focusing on maintaining efficiency and control under pressure. From a distance, Na continues observing Xiao Lin as he fights through the skeletal soldiers. She initially expected him to panic under pressure, but instead sees him actively engaging the enemies. As she analyzes his movements, she notes that his footwork, timing, and strike precision are all controlled and efficient. Compared to other students, his combat execution stands out despite his low base attributes. However, she also recognizes the limitation imposed by his physical stats. While his technique is solid, his endurance is clearly being strained. As she continues watching, she begins to suspect that his course selection was intentional, possibly aimed at compensating for his weaknesses by improving multiple areas simultaneously. Meanwhile, Xiao Lin continues fighting under increasing fatigue. He manages to defeat multiple skeletal soldiers on his own, reaching a high number of eliminations. Even so, the physical toll becomes evident, and he begins to slow down. When one of the skeletons land a hit on him, Na assumes that he has reached his limit. Contrary to her expectation, Xiao Lin recovers and activates a skill he recently obtained. Using this ability, he significantly increases the effectiveness of his attacks, allowing him to eliminate several enemies in quick succession. This unexpected display surprises Na, as she did not anticipate him possessing such a skill. Xiao Lin continues pressing forward, completing the remaining eliminations required to clear the objective. After defeating all the skeletal soldiers, he finally stops, exhausted but successful. He confirms that he has met the requirements set by Na. Observing this outcome, she reassesses her earlier judgment, realizing that his performance cannot be explained by chance alone. The scene then shifts to the student council office. The student council president is reviewing documents related to the new students. An assistant presents compiled records of those who achieved high evaluation ranks during the entrance test. While reviewing the materials, the assistant points out an unusual case. She highlights a freshman whose course selection stands out significantly. According to the records, Xiao Lin has chosen every available course. This information immediately draws the president's attention, and he reacts with surprise upon hearing it, recognizing that such a decision is highly irregular within the academy system. After the combat simulation, Xiao Lin loses consciousness from exhaustion and is taken to the Dawn Academy infirmary. He is placed on a bed to recover, while Cheng Na and the student council president remain nearby and begin discussing the situation. Cheng Na defends her actions, explaining that she was conducting a class and did not expect the situation to escalate. The president responds by pointing out that this is not the first time she has treated freshmen in such a demanding way. Their exchange reflects a difference in teaching philosophy, with Cheng Na maintaining that strict training is necessary, especially at an early stage, while the president suggests that such intensity may be excessive for new students. Cheng Na justifies her approach by stating that being overly lenient would be more harmful in the long run. After this, the discussion subsides. Xiao Lin regains consciousness and realizes he is in the infirmary. The president explains that after leaving a full simulation environment, physical and mental exhaustion remain, unlike in standard training scenarios. He confirms that Xiao Lin collapsed due to overexertion, but reassures him that recovery is already underway. Xiao Lin checks his condition and notes that while he still feels soreness, he is otherwise stable. The president then asks Cheng Na to leave the room so he can speak privately with Xiao Lin. Although she initially objects, she eventually agrees and exits after confirming that Xiao Lin has earned the privilege to leave her class early in the future. Before leaving, she warns him about the risks of pursuing both physical and magical training paths simultaneously. Once alone, the president begins addressing Xiao Lin directly. He asks whether Xiao Lin reviewed the freshman guidelines, which caution against taking too many courses at once. He then explains the structure of the academy's training system, dividing it into two main branches: the physical path, which includes combat and movement-based skills, and the magical path, which focuses on mental and energy-based abilities. He clarifies that while combining both paths may provide short-term flexibility and advantages, the difficulty increases significantly over time as each branch develops into more specialized and complex directions. The student council president continues explaining the long-term difficulty of dual training. He points out that by the second and third year, pursuing both magic and martial paths would require significantly more time and effort compared to focusing on a single path. Xiao Lin listens and acknowledges the challenge, showing that he already understands the implications. He explains his reasoning using a structured approach, comparing the academy's training system to a branching tree where specialization increases complexity over time. Despite this, he confirms his decision to continue with both paths. Internally, Xiao Lin relies on the advantage provided by his unique talent, believing it will allow him to handle the increased workload. The president is about to respond further, but a system notification interrupts the conversation. The notification indicates a direct message from the principal. After reading it, the president changes his stance. He informs Xiao Lin that since the principal has already approved his course selection, there will be no further objections. However, he notes that Xiao Lin's schedule still needs adjustment and assures him that an optimized timetable will be provided soon. For the time being, he advises Xiao Lin to rest. Xiao Lin accepts this and reflects on the unusual timing of the principal's message. He considers the possibility that the principal may have been observing him or that it could be related to his hidden talent. The scene then shifts to the principal's office, located at the top of a large building. The principal stands by the window, observing the surroundings, when a figure materializes behind him. This figure is revealed to be the academy's central control system, appearing in a human-like form. They exchange a brief conversation, with the system displaying a casual and playful tone, while the principal maintains a more serious demeanor. He reminds the system of the importance of maintaining secrecy regarding its existence. The discussion shifts to the current group of freshmen. The system notes the strong overall performance of the batch, including the presence of a highly ranked individual. The principal, however, focuses on Xiao Lin's case. He explains that Xiao Lin's recorded attributes fall below the academy's usual admission threshold, making his enrollment unusual. Normally, such a candidate would not qualify for admission. The system suggests that it may simply be an accidental selection that resulted in a beneficial outcome. However, the principal identifies a deeper issue. Upon reviewing the records, he discovers that there is no admission data for Xiao Lin in the system at all. This indicates that Xiao Lin's presence at the academy cannot be explained through normal procedures. The principal continues analyzing the anomaly and explains that although 1,360 students were admitted, the system only contains records for 1,359 admission notices. This discrepancy has never occurred before in the academy's history. He questions the central control system, expecting clarification, The system responds that no error occurred and confirms that all admission notices were issued correctly. When the principal demands to view Xiao Lin's admission record, the system refuses, stating that even he does not have the required clearance. This reveals that the record is protected at a higher level than the principal's authority. Recognizing the sensitivity of the situation, the principal decides not to pursue direct access further. Instead, he orders all standard admission records to be backed up and encrypted, ensuring that only individuals with high authority can access them. The system complies and confirms that all normal records are secured, while the one exceptional file remains under special protection. The principal acknowledges this and decides to keep the matter contained. He indicates that he will soon leave for the new world and instructs the system to monitor the situation carefully, particularly regarding Xiao Lin, to avoid unnecessary interference. The system agrees to oversee the academy in his absence. The scene then shifts to the next day in the academy cafeteria, a large space filled with students gathering for meals. Xiao Lin is seated with Zhang Tingting, who brings up the incident from the previous day, noting that his collapse and involvement with the student council have already become widely known. Xiao Lin realizes that information spreads quickly within the academy. Zhang Tingting comments on the strict nature of instructor Cheng Na, confirming that her teaching style is widely recognized. During their conversation, Xiao Lin asks about access to simulation fields. Zhang Tingting explains that while instructors can activate them, class presidents also have certain privileges. These include managing class-related functions and submitting requests to access simulation fields without needing approval from others. She guides him on how to locate the application option within his system interface and explains the process of requesting access. Xiao Lin follows her instructions and confirms that he has found the feature. However, Zhang Tingting cautions him that as a first-year student, such requests are usually denied, implying that gaining access may not be straightforward despite his position. Xiao Lin checks his system after receiving a notification and sees that his request for the full immersion simulation field has been approved immediately. Zhang Tingting is visibly shocked, recalling that such approvals usually take a long time, even for someone in a similar position. She explains that these simulations are normally reserved for more advanced students and require a high cost in exchange points, which are only refunded upon successful completion. Xiao Lin realizes the risk involved, as he currently does not have enough resources to afford failure. Despite this, he reflects on several factors: the upcoming comprehensive exam, the opportunity for early access to the new world, and the temporary nature of his position as acting class president. He also considers the competition within his class and understands that if others take control, his access to resources may be limited. Based on this, he decides that increasing his strength quickly is essential. He leaves the cafeteria with a clear objective to continue training. Zhang Tingting observes his determination and acknowledges his focus. The scene then shifts to the physical training classroom, where other students are discussing Xiao Lin's situation. Some express dissatisfaction with his appointment as acting class president, questioning the decision due to his low attributes. Wang Dalin, in particular, shows frustration and dismisses both Xiao Lin and the advisor's judgment. Their conversation escalates into a plan to interfere with Xiao Lin using indirect methods involving upper-year students. This indicates growing hostility toward him. Meanwhile, Xiao Lin continues training independently, using the available equipment to improve his physical conditioning. System notifications track his steady progress, showing incremental improvement in his physical training skill. After completing his session, he prepares to return to the dormitory before curfew. He estimates that he has just enough time to make it back. However, when he attempts to leave, he discovers that the door has been locked from the outside, preventing him from exiting. Xiao Lin struggled with the door in frustration. It had been locked from the outside, and no one had even bothered to check if somebody was still inside before sealing the room. Annoyed, he slapped his forehead. Curfew was almost here, which meant he would probably have to spend the night trapped in the training room. A sudden metallic click echoed behind him. Xiao Lin immediately stiffened and turned around in alarm. After seeing nothing there, he let out a nervous laugh and rubbed his hands together, realizing it was only the lights shutting off. Even so, he could not help complaining to himself. The academy hardly looked poor, yet the power still went out in the middle of the night. Outside at the academy training field, two students walked toward the gym. One of them, a gray-haired student wearing square glasses, spoke with a stern expression. He had heard that a freshman acting class president had been wandering outside after curfew and ignoring academy rules. The other student, Han's son, confirmed the report immediately. According to him, the information came from first-year class 6 student Liu Ruyan, and if a freshman class president was breaking curfew, the disciplinary committee needed to punish it strictly to set an example. The gray-haired student was Chun Yu, a second-year student from class 1 and a disciplinary committee member who also served as the head student for the first years. Chun Yu agreed seriously. With the principal away and the student present occupied, the disciplinary committee had to maintain order themselves. Since he oversaw first-year discipline, he could not ignore even minor violations. Han's son laughed lightly and praised him before pointing ahead toward the training field, saying he would search the area first. Chun Yu nodded in approval. As they approached the gym, Han's son secretly smirked to himself. Liu Ruyan gathered evidence on freshmen breaking rules, while he conveniently appeared to enforce discipline. Since the acting class president had only recently obtained the position, he was probably carrying a good amount of exchange points. To Han's son, this looked like an easy opportunity to profit. The two entered the training field and stopped in front of the gym. Han's son unlocked the door with a key and stepped inside. After scanning the empty room, confusion appeared on his face. He was certain someone had been there. Chun Yu noticed his reaction and asked what was wrong. Han's son hesitated nervously before explaining that he thought he had heard movement inside. Meanwhile, Xiao Lin remained hidden silently inside a cupboard, listening to everything. Frustrated, Han's son searched the room again, unable to understand where the person had gone. Chun Yu crossed his arms and reminded him that the gym had been locked from the outside the entire time. There was no way anyone could have been inside, so he probably imagined it. Han's son awkwardly laughed and agreed before suggesting they continue patrolling. Inside, however, he cursed in frustration, unable to figure out where Xiao Lin had disappeared to. At that moment, Xiao Lin quietly slipped out of the room without being noticed. The scene shifted to a forest. Leaning against a tree, Xiao Lin caught his breath after narrowly escaping capture. While calming himself, he began thinking through everything that had happened. First-year students were forbidden from being outside at night, and getting caught would definitely lead to punishment. But the situation felt far too convenient. He had been locked inside the training room from the outside, and immediately afterward the disciplinary committee arrived to inspect the area. It made him wonder whether someone was deliberately targeting him. Then Xiao Lin looked up at the sky and froze in surprise. There were 2 moons. Remembering what the teachers had said, he realized the academy had been built to completely replicate the world of Norma. That meant the new world truly possessed 2 moons. After a moment, Xiao Lin turned away and decided there was no point returning to the training field now. His priority was finding a place to hide until morning. Suddenly, a dragon appeared before him. Smoke drifted from its mouth as Xiao Lin froze in place from shock. When the creature opened its eyes and stepped closer, Xiao Lin immediately recognized it as the same dragon from the entrance ceremony. The dragon spread its massive wings and towered over him, completely overwhelming him with its size. Realizing the danger, Xiao Lin instantly turned and ran. While fleeing, he nervously glanced back, hoping the dragon was not chasing him. The thought of becoming its midnight meal only made him panic more. After confirming the dragon was not following, Xiao Lin suddenly noticed a house ahead of him. Without thinking further, he rushed toward it to hide. He pushed the door open and entered the building. Breathing heavily, Xiao Lin cautiously looked around and hoped the dragon would not follow him inside. Then he stopped in shock. Before him stretched a lush garden filled with enormous vegetables and glowing fruits. In the middle stood a large red-eyed chicken. Xiao Lin stared around in disbelief. The cabbage nearby was absurdly huge, barely recognizable as cabbage anymore. Some of the fruits even emitted a sweet fragrance while glowing faintly, making him wonder if they were edible. Then his gaze shifted toward the large chicken. The bird looked unusually plump, and Xiao Lin could not help imagining how good it would taste cooked. At that moment, the chicken's eyes suddenly glinted. Without warning, it charged at him and released flames from its beak. Xiao Lin jumped back in shock, unable to believe the chicken could breathe fire. The creature immediately lunged again, aiming directly for his face with its sharp beak. But just before it could strike, a hand suddenly appeared and grabbed the chicken by the neck, stopping it instantly. Surprised, Xiao Lin looked toward the brown-haired man standing there and demanded to know who he was. Instead of answering, the man questioned Xiao Lin first. He asked which class Xiao Lin belonged to, then pointed out that he should have been sleeping in his dorm instead of wandering around at night, sneaking into someone else's home, and nearly stealing his chicken. For a moment, both of them stood there in silence. Then Xiao Lin narrowed his eyes and asked who the man actually was. The brown-haired man clicked his tongue before introducing himself as Song Junlang, the head of logistics. He sounded irritated that a freshman on campus did not even recognize him. Song Junlang continued complaining about the current batch of freshmen. Classes had barely started, yet students were already breaking curfew and ignoring academy rules. On top of that, Xiao Lin had frightened his chicken badly, so he demanded to know how Xiao Lin intended to make up for it. Xiao Lin quickly apologized, waving his hands nervously. He explained that he only barged into the place while escaping from the dragon outside and had never intended to break any rules. Afterward, Xiao Lin explained everything that had happened from beginning to end. Once he finished, Song Junlang rested a hand on his chin and finally understood the situation. He casually reassured Xiao Lin that the dragon outside would not attack him anyway. According to him, the creature was not interested in someone as weak-looking as Xiao Lin. The remark hit Xiao Lin hard. He could barely process the fact that Song Junlang had casually referred to the terrifying dragon as nothing more than a big lizard. Song Junlang then explained the situation with the training field. According to him, tricks like locking students in restricted areas were common tactics used by members of the disciplinary committee. Surprised, Xiao Lin asked if someone had really targeted him on purpose. Song Junlang began explaining how exchange points worked inside the academy. They were the academy's main currency, necessary for buying equipment, activating simulation fields, and even trading for resources from the new world. Because of that value, some disciplinary committee members used underhanded methods to profit from students. They would deliberately lure someone into breaking the rules, then privately settle the issue in exchange for large fines paid in exchange points. Since credits and evaluations affected promotion opportunities and access to the new world, most students had no choice but to comply. Hearing that, Xiao Lin immediately thought of Wang Dalin. The only person he had clashed with recently was him, and now it seemed likely that Wang Dalin had cooperated with the disciplinary committee to target him. Song Junlang then looked at Xiao Lin with a sly smile and pointed out that Xiao Lin had already committed 2 violations, breaking curfew and trespassing into the logistics department. Together, those offenses would cost quite a lot of credits. Xiao Lin lowered his head silently without answering. At that moment, loud knocking suddenly echoed from the door outside. Still holding the chicken in one hand, Song Junlang folded his arms and remarked that the disciplinary committee seemed unusually determined tonight. They normally never inspected the logistics department at night. Then he casually asked Xiao Lin whether he should simply open the door and hand him over for punishment. Instead of panicking, Xiao Lin smiled slightly. Since Song Junlang had already explained the disciplinary committee's schemes to him, Xiao Lin doubted he was doing all this merely to mock him. Satisfied by the response, Song Junlang grinned and praised him for being quick-witted. Then, without warning, Song Junlang asked if Xiao Lin knew how to cook. Caught off guard, Xiao Lin awkwardly admitted he maybe knew a little. In reality, however, he had only watched cooking videos online and barely had any real experience. Song Junlang did not seem to care. As long as Xiao Lin could cook at all, it was enough for him. He promised to deal with the people outside and make sure Xiao Lin lost no credits. But in exchange, Xiao Lin had to do him a small favor. Tightening his grip on the chicken while practically drooling over the idea, Song Junlang revealed that he had been craving beggar's chicken for a long time. Xiao Lin would be using this very bird to make it. The chicken immediately cried out in panic. Xiao Lin pointed at himself in disbelief, stunned that he was apparently the one expected to cook. Song Junlang casually explained the situation. Xiao Lin had only 2 choices. Either walk outside and accept punishment along with the loss of credits, or stay here, cook beggar's chicken for him, and let Song Junlang smooth everything over. Left with no real alternative, Xiao Lin quickly agreed. Song Junlang narrowed his eyes and deliberately clarified that Xiao Lin was volunteering willingly and was not being forced at all. Although the situation made Xiao Lin cringe internally, he still forced out an awkward laugh and agreed enthusiastically. Satisfied, Song Junlang pointed toward the back room and told Xiao Lin to hide there quietly while he dealt with the visitors outside. Xiao Lin hurried away, thanking him repeatedly. Outside the gate, Han-san and Chunyu were waiting. Song Junlang opened the gate and casually greeted Chunyu, mockingly referring to him as the academy's golden boy for holding multiple positions at once as both head student and disciplinary committee member. Leaning against the gate lazily, Song Junlang asked why they were wandering around so late at night and jokingly wondered if they had come to the logistics department hoping for food. Chunyu adjusted his glasses calmly and explained that during patrol, they had noticed the principal's pet behaving strangely. Concerned that an intruder might have entered the area and caused trouble, they came to investigate. He also remarked that Song Junlang still seemed obsessed with trivial matters despite the late hour. Song Junlang merely smiled and asked whether they had discovered the source of the disturbance yet. Then his tone turned sharper. He pointed out that Chunyu seemed more interested in interfering with other people's business despite not even handling his own responsibilities properly. Han Sun immediately stepped forward angrily. Since the logistics department was still academy property, the disciplinary committee had the authority to inspect violations anywhere on campus. They suspected a freshman had broken curfew, and Song Junlang had no right to obstruct the investigation. Song Junlang narrowed his eyes with a faint smile and coldly reminded Han Sun that he had been speaking to Chunyu, not to a subordinate who interrupted whenever he pleased. Turning away slightly, Song Junlang continued by warning them that everyone knew the disciplinary committee's dirty dealings. If they kept pushing the matter, he would simply report them for unauthorized intrusion into the logistics department directly to the principal. Han Sun immediately shouted in frustration, but before he could continue, Chunyu raised a hand to stop him. Chunyu then addressed Song Junlang directly. According to him, Song Junlang relied too heavily on the principal's backing. Everyone in Dawn Academy knew his overall strength rating was not even C rank, and without the principal personally appointing him, he would not even qualify to remain in the second year, much less serve as a department head. In Chunyu's eyes, someone whose strength did not match his position had no right to lecture others about academy rules. Meanwhile, hidden behind a wall, Xiao Lin quietly observed the confrontation. From the hostility between them, it was obvious Chunyu held a personal grudge against Song Junlang. What confused Xiao Lin even more was Song Junlang himself. Despite supposedly lacking the strength expected of a department head, he had still been personally appointed by the principal. Xiao Lin could not help wondering who Song Junlang really was. While secretly watching from behind the wall, Xiao Lin nervously wondered if the situation was about to turn into a fight. After a brief silence, Song Junlang clicked his tongue and calmly mocked Chunyu. Since Chunyu already believed he had earned his position through connections, Song Junlang found it strange that he still insisted on provoking him. Before Chunyu could answer, Han Sun angrily stepped in and pointed at Song Junlang. He argued that even if Song Junlang was close to the principal, that did not give him the right to ignore academy regulations. The disciplinary committee had official authority to conduct patrols and inspections across campus. At that moment, a system notification suddenly appeared before Chunyu. He had received a voice call from the student president. Chunyu accepted the call, and a holographic projection of the president appeared before them. The president immediately asked if Chunyu had gone to inspect the logistics department. Then, without hesitation, he ordered Chunyu to return at once and specifically warned him not to disturb Minister Song. Chunyu immediately protested. In his eyes, they were only investigating suspicious activity, so he could not understand why they were being stopped now. Internally, he was even more frustrated because he had finally found an opportunity to pressure Song Junlang. Han Sun also complained loudly, accusing the president of favoritism. At the same time, he secretly worried that the freshmen they were searching for might actually be hiding inside logistics. Since they had not found Xiao Lin yet, he did not want to leave empty-handed. The president's expression turned serious as he explained the situation clearly. According to him, not only the principal, but in some ways the entire academy, owed Song Junlang an enormous favor. Hearing that, Chunyu immediately understood the implication. As long as Song Junlang's actions did not damage the academy's core interests, nobody had the authority to interfere with him. Frustrated, Chunyu clicked his tongue before finally ordering Han Sun to leave. Han Sun looked irritated and confused that they were actually backing down so easily. As Chunyu walked away, he warned Song Junlang to be careful in the future. Song Junlang immediately returned the warning with the exact same meaning, making it clear he was not intimidated at all. After the two finally left, Song Junlang turned and walked back towards Xiao Lin. Xiao Lin scratched his head awkwardly and apologized, feeling responsible for causing trouble tonight. At the same time, he could not stop thinking about what he had just heard. The principal, and even the academy itself, owing a student a favor, sounded unbelievable. Song Junlang simply laughed it off and rested a hand on Xiao Lin's shoulder. According to him, the situation had little to do with Xiao Lin. He and Chunyu already disliked each other, and tonight's inspection was mostly an excuse for Chunyu to provoke him. Then, still carrying the struggling chicken in one hand, Song Junlang impatiently told Xiao Lin to hurry up and start cooking beggar's chicken. Xiao Lin nervously agreed, though he privately wondered if Song Junlang was truly that obsessed with the dish. Before starting, Xiao Lin clarified that he could not guarantee the taste would be authentic. Song Junlang casually replied that authenticity did not matter. As long as the food was cooked properly, he was satisfied. Sometime later, the chicken had been fully seasoned, wrapped carefully in foil, coated with soil, and placed into the fire. Xiao Lin and Song Junlang sat beside the flames while waiting. Holding a cup of hot tea, Xiao Lin smiled faintly to himself. Ever since arriving at the academy, this was the first moment he had genuinely felt relaxed. 2 hours later, the chicken was finally finished. As the wrapping came apart, an incredibly rich aroma spread through the air. Relieved, Xiao Lin looked over the finished dish proudly. Despite it being his first real attempt at cooking, it had turned out surprisingly well. For a brief moment, he even wondered if he might actually have talent as a chef. Song Junlang tore off a chicken leg while praising the smell and appearance of the dish. Then, unexpectedly, he handed the piece to Xiao Lin first. Surprised, Xiao Lin asked if Song Junlang was not going to eat. Song Junlang casually explained that as the senior, he would naturally let the junior eat first. Besides, according to him, the cook deserved the first bite anyway. Xiao Lin laughed awkwardly and admitted he had not even eaten dinner yet before taking a bite. The moment he tasted it, his expression immediately brightened with satisfaction. Seeing the reaction, Song Junlang asked how it tasted. While eating, Xiao Lin described the meat as incredibly tender, rich, and completely free of any unpleasant smell. It was unlike any chicken he had ever eaten before. However, Song Junlang clarified that he was not asking about the flavor. He wanted to know how Xiao Lin's body felt. Confused, Xiao Lin questioned what he meant. Then suddenly, his eyes widened. A violent pain exploded through his stomach. Xiao Lin instantly collapsed, clutching himself as the sensation spread through his entire body. It felt as though his organs were burning from the inside out. Song Junlang crouched nearby with curiosity rather than concern. He asked whether the pain was severe and whether Xiao Lin felt anything besides agony, reassuring him that he only needed to endure it for a while longer. Meanwhile, Xiao Lin writhed on the ground in unbearable pain. Sweat poured down his body, and his veins bulged violently. At that moment, realization struck him. Song Junlang had deliberately avoided eating the chicken himself because there had clearly been something unusual about it from start. Even so, amid the overwhelming pain, Xiao Lin sensed something else flowing through him. Alongside the burning sensation, a strange surge of power spread through his body with his blood. Despite the suffering, he could feel a strength unlike anything he had experienced before. Nearby, information displayed itself across the notebook in Song Junlang's hand. The chicken was identified as a hybrid Iron Crest chicken number 3. Its record stated that it was non-toxic, but its gene sequence possessed potential activation properties capable of greatly enhancing the body after consumption. However, the activation process also caused an intense rejection reaction. The final effects would only be confirmed after the subject regained consciousness. While making notes in the notebook, Song Junlang muttered to himself that even after several generations of crossbreeding, the rejection symptoms were still far too severe. He would need to continue improving it. As for the actual enhancement effects, he would only know the results once Xiao Lin woke up again. Under the clear blue sky, the massive brick academy building stood tall and imposing. Inside the logistics office, everything was in complete disorder. Books were piled up everywhere, papers covered every table, and the entire room looked as if it had not been cleaned for a very long time. Xiao Lin slowly woke up on the bed with a painful groan. His head felt heavy and dizzy, causing him to rub his forehead in frustration. At that moment, Song Junlang entered the room wearing a loose white robe while carrying a tray filled with steaming golden food. With a cheerful expression, he greeted Xiao Lin and said he was finally awake. The moment Xiao Lin saw him, his expression immediately darkened. He quickly sat up and angrily accused Song Junlang of deceiving him and using him as a test subject for dangerous experiments. However, Song Junlang remained completely calm. Smiling casually, he told Xiao Lin not to overreact. He explained that he had already tested the food on himself beforehand and insisted that Xiao Lin had never been in any real danger. Xiao Lin immediately argued back, saying that it clearly counted as danger when he had nearly died from the pain. He complained that he had struggled so hard to survive until now, only to almost lose his life because of a single meal. He even stated that if he had truly died, he would never forgive Song Junlang, even as a ghost. Song Junlang simply laughed and brushed the complaint aside. He pointed out that Xiao Lin was obviously alive and perfectly fine. Then, with a mysterious smile, he leaned closer and suggested that Xiao Lin should check his stat panel before continuing to complain. Xiao Lin narrowed his eyes suspiciously and asked what Song Junlang was trying to do this time. Still, Song Junlang continued insisting, telling him to trust him just once because he would definitely be surprised. After a brief silence, Xiao Lin finally sighed and gave in. Crossing his arms, he activated his holographic interface. At first, he quietly hummed while looking through the numbers, but after reading further, his expression immediately changed in shock. A system notification displayed the recent updates. Strength increased by 1 point, Constitution increased by 2 points, and physical attack evaluation upgraded from F- to F. Xiao Lin stared at his own hand before looking back at the glowing panel, quietly wondering how something like this was even possible. His basic physical fitness skill had also risen to level 3. That realization shocked him even more. Not only had his basic stats increased, but his skill level had advanced twice as well. While Xiao Lin was still trying to process everything, Song Junlang sat nearby rapidly writing notes with obvious excitement on his face. A loud laugh escaped him as he celebrated the success of the experiment. Xiao Lin looked over and remarked that, as the person being experimented on, he at least deserved an explanation. Pointing toward the food, he asked whether the ridiculous stat increase had really come from the chicken. Song Junlang immediately nodded and invited Xiao Lin to sit down properly so they could talk. He explained that the dish was called the hybrid iron-crested chicken, a breed he had created by crossbreeding an ordinary chicken with a creature from Norma known as the iron-crested bird. Leaning forward, Song Junlang suddenly asked whether Xiao Lin had ever read transmigration novels. When Xiao Lin answered yes, Song Junlang presented him with a scenario. He asked how long a primitive human would survive if they suddenly appeared in a modern city. Xiao Lin quickly understood the point. He explained that someone from a primitive era would not possess the immune system necessary to survive in the modern world and would most likely die quickly from unfamiliar bacteria and diseases. Song Junlang excitedly stated that this was exactly the issue. He explained that Norma and Blue Star were completely different worlds, and ordinary human bodies could not naturally adapt to Norma's environment. That was the reason students were not permitted to enter the new world until their second year. Only after reaching certain stat requirements could their bodies safely endure the environment there. Hearing that explanation, Xiao Lin finally understood why the student council president had reacted so strongly earlier when the principal mentioned allowing freshmen to enter the new world ahead of schedule. Song Junlang then revealed that he had come up with the idea of using creatures native to Norma to help students build resistance more quickly. At first, he had tried directly consuming creatures from the new world, but the rejection reaction turned out to be far too severe. Not only did it fail to improve his stats, but it had almost made him seriously ill as well. Xiao Lin listened with an awkward expression and commented that Song Junlang was honestly frightening when it came to experimenting on himself. Song Junlang continued his explanation and said that after failing multiple times, he began researching methods to reduce the body's rejection response. Eventually, he settled on a process involving crossbreeding and improvement. However, he also clarified that this type of dietary enhancement only worked once. After the body fully adapted, consuming the same food again would no longer provide any increase in stats. Xiao Lin nodded in understanding and pointed out that if people could endlessly raise their stats simply by eating food, then the academy would not even need physical training classes anymore. Song Junlang then asked Xiao Lin what he thought about everything now. He explained that the iron-crested chicken would no longer have any effect on him, but he still had many other hybrid species available for testing. Xiao Lin immediately gave him a sharp look, realizing that after all the explanations, Song Junlang's true goal was simply to find a free volunteer for future experiments. Song Junlang merely responded with a carefree laugh. In the end, Xiao Lin agreed to help him, but only under one condition. None of the experiments could place his life in danger. Song Junlang immediately reassured him and told him not to worry about that. Afterward, Xiao Lin decided it was finally time to return to class. However, before leaving, he casually asked how long he had been unconscious. Song Junlang raised 2 fingers and calmly replied that it had been 2 days. Xiao Lin instantly shouted in shock. 2 entire days had passed, and he immediately worried that his credits had probably dropped into the negative because of the classes he missed. Song Junlang told him to relax. He reminded Xiao Lin that he had connections with the higher-ups and explained that the leave had already been approved. From now on, even staying around the logistics department at night would no longer be an issue. Hearing that, Xiao Lin finally relaxed and admitted that it was good news. As Xiao Lin left, Song Junlang cheerfully waved him off and reminded him to return again that night. Later, inside the academy cafeteria, Gu Xiaoye quietly ate her meal while several nearby students argued loudly. Wang Dalin complained in frustration about how absurd the entire situation involving Xiao Lin had become. Hansen asked whether he was still upset about it and reminded him that they had already received heavy criticism because of the incident. Wang Dalin angrily slammed the table and said he still could not accept it. They had carefully trapped Xiao Lin inside the training grounds and waited for him to violate academy rules. Yet Xiao Lin had somehow disappeared for 2 full days. After spending the entire day asking around, he discovered that Xiao Lin had not only avoided punishment and point deductions, but had somehow even become close to Minister Song from the logistics department. Hearing their conversation, Gu Xiaoye quietly paused. She realized that she truly had not seen Xiao Lin during the past 2 days. At that moment, she suddenly noticed someone standing nearby. When she looked up, she saw Xiao Lin wearing his academy uniform once again. He gave her a relaxed smile and casually waved while greeting her with a simple hello. Gu Xiaoye looked at him seriously and immediately asked what exactly he had been doing during the past 2 days. Looking across the cafeteria table with the same serious expression, she repeated her question about where he had been. Xiao Lin gave a tired smile and casually replied that it was a long story. He told her that he would explain everything later. Before the conversation could continue, a loud voice suddenly echoed throughout the cafeteria. Wang Dalin stood nearby with a mocking grin mixed with visible surprise. In a loud voice, he questioned how Xiao Lin still had the courage to show up there at all. He walked directly toward the table and sarcastically greeted Xiao Lin as the all-powerful class monitor. Laughing to himself, Wang Dalin said he had honestly assumed Xiao Lin would already have been expelled after violating academy rules and disappearing for 2 full days. One of the students beside him quietly warned him not to start trouble in public, but Wang Dalin completely ignored the advice. Standing over the table, he continued mocking Xiao Lin. He claimed he had heard Xiao Lin had been training hard recently, but said it was meaningless because trash would always remain trash no matter how much effort was put in. He sneered and asked whether Xiao Lin was still dreaming about surpassing others through hard work alone. Then he leaned closer and coldly stated that no matter what kind of support Xiao Lin relied on, he would never be able to close the gap in strength between them. Xiao Lin did not even bother looking up. Instead, he casually picked at his ear and responded with dry sarcasm, saying Wang Dalin sounded extremely impressive and should continue talking. That response only made Wang Dalin even angrier. He demanded to know what kind of attitude Xiao Lin was showing and warned him not to become overconfident just because he had gotten close to Song Junlang from the logistics department. Pointing directly at him, Wang Dalin declared that strength was the only thing that truly mattered inside the academy. Before finally turning away, he threw out one last threat. He told Xiao Lin to enjoy showing off while he still could, because during the comprehensive exam, he would personally show him just how large the gap between them really was. As Wang Dalin walked away, Xiao Lin watched him leave with a confused expression and quietly commented that the guy was seriously insane. Gu Xiaoye, who had remained calm the entire time, then asked Xiao Lin whether he had seen the latest academy notice yet. Xiao Lin asked what she meant, and Gu Xiaoye raised a finger while explaining that the schedule for the first comprehensive exam had changed. Xiao Lin looked surprised and repeated the word changed. Gu Xiaoye nodded and explained that the exam had originally been scheduled for 3 months later, but it had now been moved forward to only a month and a half away. The news immediately hit Xiao Lin hard. He lowered his gaze toward the table as his thoughts began racing. His preparation time had suddenly been cut in half, and with so little time remaining, improving enough now seemed far more difficult. He remembered that today's lesson was basic meditation, and he had already missed 2 days of classes. A strong sense of urgency quickly settled over him. He realized he needed to catch up as quickly as possible. At this rate, even passing the assessment might become difficult, let alone achieving his original goal of placing within the top 3. Xiao Lin hurried toward his basic meditation class, but before he could properly settle in, someone suddenly blocked his path. Standing in front of him was a small girl wearing an oversized purple wizard robe along with a pointed hat that appeared almost too large for her. A system notification quickly identified her as Li Meiling, a third-year student and the substitute teacher for basic meditation. Li Meiling looked up at Xiao Lin with a sharp glare and immediately asked whether he was the Xiao Lin she had heard about. Without even waiting for an answer, she instantly began scolding him. She accused him of bullying senior Cheng Na and causing trouble during her swordsmanship class. According to Li Meiling, Xiao Lin had pressured Cheng Na into agreeing to an arrogant and unreasonable request. Caught completely off guard by the sudden accusations, Xiao Lin awkwardly tried to explain himself. Sweating nervously, he insisted that the entire matter was a misunderstanding. He explained that he had never bullied Cheng Na at all and claimed that she was the one who originally suggested testing his abilities. He also added that he had only passed through his own effort. However, Li Meiling immediately shouted back, her loud voice echoing throughout the classroom and startling everyone nearby. She accused Xiao Lin of lying and said she already knew he had insisted on following the dual magic and martial cultivation path, even after Cheng Na had kindly warned him against it. She even brought up how he had used the student council president to pressure Cheng Na into agreeing. Li Meiling continued angrily, saying that if Cheng Na had not personally spoken up on Xiao Lin's behalf, she would not even have allowed him to enter the classroom. Faced with her overwhelming attitude and pressure, Xiao Lin could only nod weakly in response. As the class finally began, Li Meiling walked to the front while still muttering complaints about arrogant freshmen who failed to understand Cheng Na's good intentions. She then revealed the reason Cheng Na cared so deeply about this issue. According to Li Meiling, Cheng Na once guided another junior student who had been exactly like Xiao Lin. That student had also stubbornly insisted on pursuing dual magic and martial cultivation despite receiving repeated warnings. However, things ended badly. During his first real encounter in the New World, his magic was not refined enough, and his swordsmanship was not strong enough either. In the end, he was completely overwhelmed and killed by one of the alien races living there. Li Meiling explained that when the body was eventually sent back, it barely looked human anymore. The incident became something Cheng Na never forgot. According to Li Meiling, Cheng Na blamed herself for failing to stop him back then, and ever since that day, she had become extremely sensitive whenever she saw someone making the same decision. After finishing the story, Li Meiling turned toward Xiao Lin and coldly stated that he understood absolutely nothing. Xiao Lin remained silent for a while as the meaning behind everything slowly settled into his mind. He finally realized that Cheng Na had never opposed him because she looked down on him. She genuinely did not want another student to die the same way. After a brief pause, Xiao Lin calmly looked at Li Meiling and told her that he understood now. He explained that she did not need to worry because he had no intention of repeating that tragedy. Instead, he firmly stated that everything he was doing was specifically meant to help him survive in the new world. Li Meiling quietly stared at him through her glasses for several seconds before letting out a dismissive huff. She commented that saying such things was much easier than actually accomplishing them. Then, before walking away, she gave him one final warning. She made it clear that she would not provide any extra tutoring for the 2 days of classes he had missed. If he wanted to catch up, he would have to find a way himself. Xiao Lin walked through the meditation classroom, passing by the other students who were already seated cross-legged on their cushions. Gu Xiaoye, who was sitting among the rows of students, raised her hand and signaled for him to come over. Xiao Lin looked at her in surprise. Gu Xiaoye held out a notebook toward him and explained that it contained notes from the previous 2 days of classes. Xiao Lin reached out and accepted the notebook while offering her a grateful smile. Soon afterward, Xiao Lin sat quietly with a textbook open in front of him, carefully reading through the basics of magic theory. According to the material, the world's magic system was built around 4 major elements: wind, fire, water, and earth. Powerful mages could freely control these elements, arranging and combining them almost like writing code in order to create different spells. Meditation served as the foundation for everything. The goal was to sense the elemental particles drifting through the air, establish a connection with them, and eventually learn how to control them. After reading for some time, Xiao Lin closed his eyes and sat in a meditation posture, trying to focus completely. However, After several minutes passed, sweat slowly appeared on his forehead. Something felt wrong. No matter how hard he concentrated, he could not sense anything at all. The more he tried, the more frustrated he became. Later that night, Xiao Lin returned to the logistics department and helped Song Junlang carry baskets filled with strange, oversized hybrid vegetables. Song Junlang casually tossed a glowing fruit that resembled a lemon into the air while asking whether Xiao Lin had already encountered problems during meditation class. Hearing that, Xiao Lin immediately looked hopeful and asked whether Song Junlang also had some kind of food capable of improving elemental perception. Song Junlang stared at him blankly before asking whether Xiao Lin seriously thought he was Doraemon. Xiao Lin awkwardly looked away while Song Junlang continued explaining the situation. He stated that Xiao Lin's condition was actually completely normal. According to him, the hardest part of meditation was not leveling up afterward, but taking the very first step from 0 to 1 experience point. He explained that many students could go from level 1 to level 50 within a week or 2, but obtaining that very first point could easily take 1 or even 2 months. Xiao Lin immediately complained that he did not have that much time. He reminded Song Junlang that the first comprehensive assessment was now only a little over a month away. He insisted that he needed to improve every aspect of his strength before then. Song Junlang thought quietly for a moment before suggesting that Xiao Lin ask classmates who specialized in magic courses for advice. He explained that elemental perception was directly connected to the intelligence attribute. The higher a person's intelligence, the easier it became to sense elemental energy and break through that first barrier. Intelligence attribute. Xiao Lin quietly repeated the words as his thoughts began moving rapidly. Then something suddenly clicked in his mind. As the acting class monitor, he actually had permission to view the basic attribute data of his classmates. And when it came to intelligence, there was one person in the class who stood far above everyone else. Gu Xiaoye. Xiao Lin immediately waved his hand through the air and opened the holographic system interface. However, the moment the data loaded, his expression completely changed. His eyes locked onto one particular section of the screen. Xiao Lin stood there silently, staring at the numbers in shock. Gu Xiaoye possessed an unbelievably high intelligence stat, but according to the system, she only had 2 years left to live. The next day, Xiao Lin walked through the corridor and eventually arrived at the meditation room. After opening the door, he entered the classroom. Gu Xiaoye noticed him and greeted him while sitting in a meditation posture. Xiao Lin did not respond immediately. Instead, he quietly sat down on a nearby cushion. Gu Xiaoye looked at him in confusion. After a moment, Xiao Lin spoke. He explained that, as acting class president, he had permission to view the profiles of students in his class, including their remaining lifespan. He then told her that he had seen her profile and asked whether she really only had 2 years left to live. At the same time, Xiao Lin felt somewhat awkward bringing up such a personal topic. Gu Xiaoye was surprised by the question. After a brief pause, she confirmed that the information was correct and asked why he suddenly wanted to talk about it. Hearing how calmly she answered, Xiao Lin was caught off guard. He immediately asked whether she was suffering from serious illness or some kind of terminal condition. He then told her that they had gone through the entrance examination together and that he was willing to help if there was something he could do. Gu Xiaoye paused for a moment before replying. She explained that it was neither a serious illness nor a terminal disease. It was simply a condition she had been born with. Xiao Lin was puzzled by the explanation. After thinking for a moment, he realized why she had paid so much attention when Qin Chuan explained that lifespan could be increased within the academy. Gu Xiaoye confirmed that this was the reason. She explained that students who failed the entrance examination would have their memories erased and be sent back to Blue Star. For most people, returning home would not be a major issue. However, in her case, returning meant living out the remaining 2 years of her lifespan without any way to change her fate. She told Xiao Lin that passing the examination had given her a chance to change that outcome. Gu Xiaoye then thanked him for the help he had provided during the entrance examination. Xiao Lin became slightly embarrassed and reminded her that they had both benefited from their cooperation. He returned to his seat and sat down. While preparing for class, he told her that if she ever needed help, she could ask him. He explained that he already considered her a friend after everything they had experienced together. Gu Xiaoye smiled and agreed. At that moment, the class bell rang. Li Meiling entered the room while complaining about having to teach another class. When she looked across the classroom, she noticed Xiao Lin and Gu Xiaoye sitting in the back row. She commented that both of them had arrived on time and briefly acknowledged it. Xiao Lin responded with a smile and thanked her. Li Meiling immediately pointed at him and reminded him that he had failed to achieve elemental perception during the previous class. She warned him that if he still could not sense the elements this time, he should stop wasting time and focus on swordsmanship instead. Xiao Lin nodded while thinking that, despite her appearance, Li Meiling had a very direct personality. Soon the classroom became quiet. All of the students closed their eyes and began meditating. Xiao Lin did the same. However, after some time passed, sweat appeared on his forehead. Just like before, he could not sense any elemental energy. After struggling for a while, he opened his eyes. Realizing that normal methods were not working, he decided to try a different approach. He activated his talent. The system immediately began scanning the students in the room. Most students either had no meditation skill or had only just reached the beginner level. Xiao Lin quickly noticed that Gu Xiaoya's meditation skill was far ahead of everyone else's. Given her extremely high intelligence attribute, this result was not surprising. The system identified her basic meditation skill as copyable. Without hesitation, Xiao Lin copied it. A system notification confirmed the successful copy and informed him that the effect would remain active for 3 minutes. Using the copied skill, Xiao Lin immediately entered meditation again. This time, he experienced the process from a completely different perspective. He focused on memorizing the sensation of elemental perception while the copied skill remained active. Meanwhile, Li Meiling sat at the front of the classroom, flipping through a book. She considered the lesson routine and observed the students while monitoring their progress. In her view, only Gu Xiaoya possessed exceptional talent in the field of magic. However, her attention was suddenly drawn elsewhere. She noticed that elemental energy was gathering around Xiao Lin. Li Meiling immediately focused her attention on him. Given Xiao Lin's intelligence attribute, this should not have been happening. A moment later, a system notification appeared in Xiao Lin's mind. Basic meditation had been successfully unlocked. His basic meditation skill had officially reached level 1. Seeing the notification, Xiao Lin understood that Song Junlang's explanation had been correct. Once a person successfully perceived the elements for the first time, they could establish the foundation needed to continue training normally. Just as he was examining the notification, Li Meiling walked over and stopped in front of him. Resting her hands on her hips, she looked directly at him. She pointed out that he had been unable to sense elemental energy during the previous class, yet had suddenly achieved a breakthrough during this one. Li Meiling then demanded an explanation and asked what method he had used to produce such a result. Li Meiling had completely given up on questioning Xiao Lin inside the classroom. She grabbed him by the wrist and dragged him outside while Gu Xiaoya and the rest of the class watched. Once outside, she opened the brain interface and checked his student profile. After confirming that Xiao Lin had really unlocked basic meditation, she immediately questioned him. Moving closer, Li Meiling demanded that he stop making excuses and tell her the truth. Xiao Lin awkwardly suggested that maybe he simply had a high learning ability and experienced a sudden moment of insight. Li Meiling clearly did not believe him. She told him not to treat her like an idiot and pressed him for a real explanation. Realizing he needed a better excuse, Xiao Lin explained that he had been eating various experimental foods prepared by Li Meiling's relative, Song Junlang. He guessed that one of those strange fruits had temporarily enhanced his elemental perception. Hearing Song Junlang's name, Li Meiling paused. After thinking it over, she admitted that the explanation sounded much more believable. She then warned Xiao Lin that serving as Song Junlang's test subject was dangerous and reminded him not to risk his life carelessly. Xiao Lin thanked her and accepted the warning. Feeling encouraged, he asked when students would officially begin learning spells. Li Meiling flicked him on the forehead. She pointed out that with an intelligence attribute of only 2, he was already thinking about learning spells. She explained that meditation was only the first step. Actually casting spells required much higher intelligence, making it unrealistic for him to master magic during his first year. Xiao Lin accepted the explanation. He understood that his low intelligence was still his greatest weakness. Although his top student talent allowed him to copy skills, its 7-day cooldown prevented him from relying on it frequently. Because of that, he began considering whether he should continue focusing on physical training. Remembering Cheng Na's concerns, Li Meiling finally understood why Xiao Lin insisted on training both magic and martial arts. With attributes as low as his, he was simply trying to improve every possible chance of surviving the freshman assessment. Crossing her arms, Li Meiling continued explaining that she was only pointing him in the right direction because she chose to help him. Most instructors would not bother. She then asked whether he remembered seeing students using staves during the entrance examination. The question reminded Xiao Lin of the battle against the Goblin King. He recalled using a novice staff to fire an energy blast despite never learning any magic. Li Meiling raised her own staff, topped with a glowing blue crystal, as magical energy gathered around it. She explained that a staff was not required to cast spells, but it greatly reduced the difficulty of controlling elemental power while improving elemental perception. She also explained that the novice staves used during the entrance examination were pre-enchanted with a basic energy blast skill. As long as the user's intelligence was above 0, the embedded skill could be activated. As they walked through the academy grounds, Li Meiling pointed toward the equipment trading area. She explained that students could purchase various novice staves there, each containing different enchanted skills, allowing them to choose one that suited their fighting style. Hearing the explanation, Xiao Lin thanked her for the advice. Li Meiling immediately warned Xiao Lin not to get carried away. Holding up her staff, she explained that the academy's equipment trading area was filled with products of varying quality. Some poorly made enchanted weapons could even explode after only a few uses, so he needed to choose carefully and avoid being cheated. The blue glow around her staff gradually faded. She also warned him not to waste time looking at expensive high-tier staves. With his current intelligence, he should focus on building a solid foundation instead of chasing powerful equipment. After making sure Xiao Lin understood, she turned to leave. Before walking away, she stopped and reminded him one last time not to risk his life in pursuit of strength. No matter what happened, staying alive was always the most important thing. Watching her leave, Xiao Lin realized that although Li Meiling always spoke harshly, she genuinely cared about her students. Later, Xiao Lin arrived at the academy's equipment trading area. The spacious hall was lined with swords, shields, armor, staffs, and various enchanted equipment. He checked his remaining funds. After reviewing his exchange points, he remembered that entering a full immersion simulation required a deposit of 500 exchange points. The deposit would be refunded after clearing the simulation, but failing would result in losing the entire amount. After calculating his expenses, Xiao Lin decided he could only spend 300 exchange points on equipment. Over the next week, he compared prices, negotiated with vendors, and finally customized 2 novice weapons that matched his fighting style. The first was an enhanced novice staff embedded with an ice bullet spell and rated at F rank. The second was an enhanced novice dagger engraved with a wind blade skill and rated at E rank for physical attacks. With his preparations complete, Xiao Lin arrived outside the holographic simulation arena wearing his combat gear. After confirming that both his equipment and skills were ready, he chose to begin the challenge. The Academy accepted his application and temporarily froze 500 exchange points as the required deposit, which would only be returned if he successfully cleared the simulation. As the activation finished, sparks, smoke, and glowing embers surrounded him. Moments later, the scenery transformed into a massive volcanic cavern. Rivers of lava flowed beneath towering rock formations while Xiao Lin stood on a narrow stone path, suspended above the molten landscape. The simulation assigned him 2 objectives. He could either reach the destination deep inside the cavern or survive for 2 hours against continuous waves of monsters. Completing either objective would clear the dungeon. Just then, a low growl echoed from the darkness, followed by the sharp screech of an approaching creature. A large rat-like monster emerged from the shadows. Its red eyes glowed in the darkness, and jagged rocky spikes covered its back as it let out a threatening screech. Holding his novice dagger, Xiao Lin advanced along the narrow stone path. He remembered that students could freely choose both the simulation environment and the monster difficulty before entering the training arena. For this challenge, he had selected an E-rank dungeon. Suddenly, a large pack of rock-armored rats rushed out of a nearby tunnel, filling the cavern with sharp screeches. Preparing for battle, Xiao Lin raised his dagger. A green wind aura gathered around the blade as he decided to test his newly acquired weapon. He swung the dagger, releasing a wind blade that cut through the first charging monster. The armor-breaking effect sliced through the rat with ease. Without slowing down, Xiao Lin continued attacking. Green wind slashes swept across the stone path, cutting through one monster after another until they disappeared into particles of light. As the battle continued, Xiao Lin realized that real combat provided far better training than ordinary practice. Using the dagger's armor-breaking effect, he quickly eliminated the remaining rock-armored rats. Compared to fighting skeleton soldiers, defeating these monsters was much more efficient. A loud squeak suddenly echoed behind him. Turning around, Xiao Lin spotted a giant, flaming rock-armored rat. It was much larger than the others and was clearly the leader of the pack. Seeing the boss appear, Xiao Lin decided to test his second weapon. As the giant rat lunged toward him, he put away his dagger and raised his novice staff. A shard of ice formed at the tip before he fired an ice bullet. The spell struck the charging monster, freezing it in midair and slowing its movement. Xiao Lin immediately switched back to his dagger, rushed forward, and released another wind blade. The frozen boss was split cleanly in half. Standing amid the drifting smoke, Xiao Lin examined the result. The freezing effect of the staff combined perfectly with the dagger's armor-breaking ability, producing exactly the outcome he had expected. The battle also improved his proficiency with both weapons while increasing his physical training. Remembering how little progress he made during ordinary training sessions, Xiao Lin realized that real combat was far more effective for growth. After surviving for some time inside the dungeon, he continued deeper into the cavern. Since clearing the survival objective did not immediately end the simulation, he decided to remain inside and train as much as possible. He eventually stopped beside a large boulder to recover his stamina before exploring the cave further. While resting, multiple alerts suddenly appeared on his brain interface. Curious, Xiao Lin opened the screen and discovered that every notification came from the Academy's student forum. While checking the notifications, Xiao Lin found a popular discussion questioning why Class 7's acting class president had received perfect attendance despite having single-digit attributes. He quickly realized the post was targeting him. It had been created by Wang Dalin. The post pointed out that Xiao Lin had missed 2 days of classes during the first week of school, yet had not lost any credits and still received perfect attendance. Wang Dalin also accused him of relying on connections within the logistics department. He went on to criticize Xiao Lin's low attributes, claiming he had become acting class president through luck alone, and even questioned the Academy's rules while demanding that Xiao Lin be expelled. After reading the comments, Xiao Lin understood that Wang Dalin was deliberately trying to damage his reputation. Before he could think further, the thread suddenly disappeared. The Academy system announced that the post had been removed by an administrator for spreading malicious rumors and conducting personal attacks. Wang Dalin also received a 7-day mute. Xiao Lin wondered who had deleted the post. A moment later, he received a private message from Li Meiling. She simply reminded him to keep training because becoming stronger was the best response. After reading the message, Xiao Lin understood what she meant. Rather than waste time on Wang Dalin's schemes, he tightened his grip on his weapon and continued deeper into the cave. Crystal formations covered the walls as he advanced cautiously. Along the way, he remembered that every dungeon inside the simulation arena was an exact recreation of a real location in the new world. That made him wonder why the Academy still held real examinations with death penalties when such realistic simulations already existed. As he continued forward, Xiao Lin noticed the corpse of a rock-armored rat lying on the ground. He immediately stopped. The cave had become completely silent. Considering the large number of monsters outside, the silence felt unnatural. Without warning, a violent explosion erupted from deeper inside the cavern. Flames and shattered rocks rushed through the passage. Xiao Lin quickly raised an arm to shield himself from the blast. As the smoke cleared, a towering red-skinned monster emerged carrying a massive glowing battle axe. Xiao Lin immediately recognized it as a native race from planet Norma. It was a black iron rank lava berserker. Looking at the monster, Xiao Lin recalled the Academy's ranking system. Creatures with fewer than 100 total attributes belonged to the normal rank, which included all freshmen. Those with more than 100 total attributes reached Black Iron rank, the minimum level required to enter the new world. Above Black Iron rank were Bronze, Silver, Gold, Dark Gold, and Legendary rank. Looking up at the Lava Berserker, Xiao Lin immediately understood the difference between them. A Black Iron rank opponent possessed more than 100 total attributes. His own total attributes were only 13. The enormous health bar above the monster made the gap in strength impossible to ignore. Xiao Lin realized he was facing an opponent from an entirely different level. Looking up at the towering lava berserker, Xiao Lin immediately felt the pressure of a black iron rank opponent. The lava berserker swung its massive axe without warning. Xiao Lin jumped backward and narrowly dodged the attack. Sweat covered his face as he realized this enemy was completely different from the Goblin King during the entrance examination. That boss had fought with suppressed strength, but the lava berserker was at its full power. Its attributes, speed, and strength were on an entirely different level. The monster charged again. Its axe slammed into the ground, shattering the stone beneath it. Xiao Lin slid backward to avoid the impact. He knew he could end the simulation at any time. The only consequence would be failing the challenge and losing 500 exchange points. But he also knew that giving up would never help him survive real battles where his life would truly be on the line. Taking a fighting stance, Xiao Lin decided to test his limits against a black iron rank opponent. The lava berserker suddenly closed the distance and swung its axe again. Xiao Lin bent backward and narrowly avoided the strike before slipping behind the monster. He slashed its back with his dagger, leaving only a shallow wound. The attack failed to penetrate its defense. The lava berserker immediately swung its axe behind itself. Xiao Lin leaned backward again and barely avoided the attack. While dodging, he noticed that the monster turned much slower than it attacked from the front. As the battle continued, Xiao Lin carefully observed every movement. He realized that whenever the monster changed the direction of its attack, its speed briefly dropped. He also noticed that the glowing core in the center of its chest became brighter just before every attack. That brief moment, when it raised its arm to strike, was the opening he needed. Xiao Lin immediately switched to his staff and gathered magical energy. He fired an ice bullet directly at the glowing core. The attack briefly interrupted the monster's movement. Without hesitation, Xiao Lin switched back to his dagger and rushed forward. He drove the blade into the glowing core. The lava berserker's axe slipped from its hand as cracks spread across the red crystal embedded in its chest. The monster roared in anger while its health dropped. Enraged, it gathered crimson energy into its fist and struck Xiao Lin. Xiao Lin crossed his arms to block the blow, but the impact still launched him into the cavern wall. Holding his weapon, Xiao Lin assessed his condition. His attack had damaged the core, but it was far from enough. His left arm was badly injured, and several ribs were likely broken. Even so, he refused to stop fighting. He activated his top student talent. The skill immediately analyzed the monster and detected its berserk ability. The technique increased attack power by 30% while reducing defense by 15% for 60 seconds. Once it ended, the user entered a weakened state that reduced all attributes for 10 minutes. Without hesitation, Xiao Lin copied the skill. A crimson aura surrounded his body, and his eyes turned blood red as berserk activated. Looking at the remaining time, Xiao Lin realized 1 minute was enough. He charged forward. His first strike landed cleanly before he immediately retreated. The lava berserker's health dropped to nearly half. Xiao Lin quickly realized that berserk strengthened both of them while lowering both of their defenses. That also meant he could finally break through the monster's armor. As the lava berserker attacked again, Xiao Lin dodged the strike and slashed one of its legs. The attack pierced the joint, forcing the giant monster onto one knee as its health dropped even further. Moving around the monster, Xiao Lin remembered that the joints were always the weakest points on large enemies. He attacked again from behind before circling back to the front. With only seconds remaining on berserk, the lava berserker roared and swung its axe once more. Xiao Lin slipped past the attack. Seeing the final opening, he rushed forward. With all his remaining strength, he drove his dagger straight toward the monster's glowing core. As long as he destroyed the core, the battle would be over. The lava berserker's core finally shattered. Cracks spread across its body before it broke apart into countless fragments and vanished. Still gripping his sword, Xiao Lin stood there, breathing heavily as berserk ended and the weakened state took effect. He stabbed his sword into the ground to support himself before dropping to one knee. His entire body felt unbearably heavy. After a moment, he collapsed onto the ground. Every muscle felt like it was filled with lead. Despite the exhaustion, Xiao Lin smiled. He had defeated a genuine black iron rank enemy. For the first time, he had overcome an opponent far stronger than himself. As he lay there recovering, a new notification suddenly appeared before him. His soul strength had reached the required threshold, allowing his top student talent to evolve. After the upgrade finished, Xiao Lin stared at the panel in surprise. His top student talent had advanced to level 2. The upgrade increased his passive learning efficiency from 100% to 120%, raised his weekly copy limit from 1 skill to 2, and unlocked a new ability that improved skill analysis accuracy. Looking over the changes, Xiao Lin realized the new analysis effect would allow him to understand and copy skills more efficiently in the future. Satisfied with the upgrade, he decided to examine it later and finish the simulation first. After walking for a while, he arrived at the edge of a lava pool where a stone pillar marked with a large S stood. He placed both hands on the mark. The simulation immediately recognized the objective, completing the scorching lava cavern instance. After that day, Xiao Lin entered the simulation field twice every week without fail. He crossed frozen tundras, scorching deserts, dense rainforests, poisonous swamps, and countless dangerous regions throughout Norma. He defeated countless monsters, cleared one simulation after another, and copied many different skills. Even so, his top student talent never showed another upgrade. Eventually, Xiao Lin stopped trying to figure out on his own. If he wanted answers, he would have to ask someone more knowledgeable. Later, he visited Song Junlang's laboratory. When Xiao Lin mentioned soul strength, Song Junlang looked surprised. He explained that soul strength was second-year material. According to him, soul strength was an innate property of every person, completely unrelated to bloodlines, genetics, training, attributes, or learned skills. No matter how much someone trained, it could never be increased. Hearing that left Xiao Lin puzzled. If soul strength truly could not change, then why had his talent upgraded after reaching the required threshold? Before he could ask another question, Song Junlang suddenly wheeled out a caged chicken with a huge grin. He proudly announced that his latest experiment had succeeded. Seeing another chicken, Xiao Lin immediately sighed. Song Junlang happily explained that this one produced the best results if eaten raw. Xiao Lin froze. Ignoring his reaction, Song Junlang placed a plate holding fresh raw chicken in front of him and urged him to eat it while it was still warm. After hesitating for a long moment, Xiao Lin convinced himself that Song Junlang had helped him many times already. He finally forced himself to eat the entire thing. Song Junlang watched with admiration and praised his determination. The moment Xiao Lin finished, however, his expression turned pale. He rushed to a trash bin and vomited. The texture was unbearable, and his stomach felt like it was twisting apart. 3 hours later, Song Junlang excitedly asked him to check his status so he could record the results. Still exhausted, Xiao Lin slowly opened his panel. The experiment had successfully granted him passive fire resistance. Song Junlang celebrated the success, explaining that elemental resistance skills were extremely difficult to obtain through normal training. Xiao Lin joked that if raw food could also increase soul strength, he would even eat a xenomorph alive. Song Junlang laughed and reminded him once again that soul strength was innate and could not be improved. Changing the subject, he asked about the upcoming first-year examination. Xiao Lin confirmed that it would begin at 8 o'clock the morning after tomorrow. Song Junlang reminded him that the real examination was completely different from a simulation. Inside the simulation field, death only ended the challenge. During the real examination, however, dying would permanently cost 10 years of lifespan. He advised Xiao Lin to do his best, but never gamble with his life. Soon afterward, Class 7 gathered before Advisor Qin Chuan. Advisor Qin encouraged everyone to stay confident instead of looking defeated. Wang Dalin immediately stepped forward with a smug grin, boasting that there was nothing to fear. He confidently declared that as long as everyone stayed behind him, he would cut down any enemy that stood in their way.